bring very strong evidence. And why is that? I'll give an example we like to demonstrate. So imagine we found a DNA match for a suspect in a crime scene. Mm-hmm. Now the prosecutor says, if you look at all the DNA markers that matched, this is a 1 in billion match. This is usually DNA matches in forensics are usually 1 in a billion. So he's saying, whatever your probability was that this guy was the murderer, before you saw the evidence, you should have dated 1 billion higher. Now, this is an awful probabilistic inference mistake. And why is that? Because a chance DNA match is not the best explanation for why you would find the DNA match.
Sure.
Better explanations would be he was there for innocent reasons. It could be lab contamination.
Yeah.
It could be police planting evidence. Okay, there's adversary planting evidence. But there's so many other ways you could reach this evidence that is not the one that's easy to calculate. The other ones are hard to calculate. We don't know how often someone would plant evidence. We don't know what's the rate of contamination, especially not under the specifics of the case, which would be different every time.
Yeah.
But it's very easy to know these are not 1 in a billion. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when everyone says, in order for zoonosis to be correct, I need an early cluster in the seafood market to be a 1 in 10,000 coincidence, they're the ones that need to show that they've looked through all the options by which the market could make an early cluster, and none of them go above 1 to 10,000. That is not something that anyone can do in such systems. When you have a virus with exponential growth, people running all around the city, we have the Chinese government with interest to hide data. You have all these things that could happen. Uh-huh. Such a complex system. Nothing can be claimed at 1 to 10,000. So that is the main thing.
So I guess I'm trying to think. I can understand that. I'm sympathetic to that as a generality, but so I'm just trying to think in particular, like what is the. So for instance, I think that this explanation is more compelling if the cases are kind of like spread at random throughout Wuhan, and like the very first case is the wet market case, just the very first one, and that's it. Then I think at that point it's like, okay, well, there's a lot of reasons why that first one could be there that is more likely than just it starting at the wet market, right? It could be that there were other cases we didn't detect. It could be lab contamination. It could be whatever. There's a million things that could explain that. But when all of the infection patterns seem to start to spread from there, and I can't think of any competing. So like for the DNA thing, I can think of competing evidence, or I can think of competing hypotheses for how DNA could end up on a crime scene, right? Like you said, like lab contamination, the guy went there for some other reason. I'm trying to think of what is the competing hypothesis, or how else could we get all the test results that we did relating to the epidemiological spread of the disease from the wet market? What's just like the strongest competing hypothesis there that could explain that? Because the only one I can think of is, for lab leak to be true in my mind right now, there needs to be like a plan from somebody to covertly transfer the virus from the lab to the market, infect an animal, and leave without infecting himself. And there's no evidence for that theory, obviously. So that's the only like compelling one I can think of. Yeah, so I'm curious what you would think on that.
Okay, so I will present a scenario in a minute, but the first point is much more important. Mm-hmm. So you're saying I cannot think of it. Sometimes we cannot think about everything. Sometimes we don't know the explanation. The fact that we don't know the explanation does not mean we immediately need to accept that there is no explanation.
True, but I have compelling evidence for the zoonotic spillover. So at that point, I would need something else. I wouldn't just assume, well, just because it's not 100%, I'm going to assume that it could be anything else, right? I feel like I would need something.
Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. Notice what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's not evidence. Sure. I'm saying in order for you to claim 1 in 10,000 evidence, like the parallel of DNA being the 1 in billion evidence, you need to get to confidence that is close to 1 in 10,000 that you haven't missed anything. Okay, so you need to say, I'm 99.99% sure. There is no other way other than a chance and other than the lab worker accidentally going to WAV. So that is the main point that needs to be understood. And I think, so let's let's look a bit at what are the options we have. So, what I think is the best explanation for HSM is that HSM has several factors that make it a likely first cluster location. Now, this was misunderstood by the opposition in the debate to say, I'm saying it must be the location. I'm not saying. What I'm saying is it's significantly more than a 1% probability to form the early cluster. And we pointed to a few things. One is that it is a place with many visitors. Okay, so model is that we have about a few weeks of cryptic transmission in Wuhan. So we had a lab worker infecting friends, and it grows around the city. Just to give
So that scenario that you just said right there, in my mind, is like a one in a Google. Like that's like an almost infinitesimally small chance that a person could be cryptically transmitting amongst a group of friends in a major city like that. I'm unaware of that.
What?
Even. What?
What?
That SARS-CoV-2 could do cryptic transmission between groups of people in a major city. That would start to show up in hospitalizations and people would be symptomatic. I just don't. That seems it's so a 1 out of 100 trillion chance to me.
Okay, so maybe to clarify what I'm talking about it growing from 1 to 100 people. 1 to 100 people is 6-7 duplications. That's 3-4 weeks, maybe more for the earliest variant. That's 100 people. 100 people is just a handful of hospitalizations. You have hundreds of thousands of flu infections going on at the same time. So you want to say that 5 hospitalizations going on in the city, there's just no option that this would be missed amidst 100,000 flu infections going on. I don't think the Google. I think that's maybe 50%.
It's possible that could happen, but then it would have to be that plus the first wave of infections that are noticed are the ones coming from the seafood market, and they're still not spreading from any other place until after they've gone from the seafood market. Like, wouldn't those 100 people that were infected, wouldn't I see them move out into other places? Like the fact that the seafood market.
Sure.
So
that's the next step. Yeah. So that's the next step. So now we have maybe 50, maybe 100, maybe more people going around the city. One of them is at this point is likely to reach the market because the market has 10,000 visitors. So within a few days, you should get one of them. In the market. Now, the market. Once the market. So that's the first factor. The market is very likely to see incoming virus traffic when there's very low transmission. That's not true for many places. For example, we know that churches, especially if you had choirs, we know. Call centers, so where people make a lot of talk a lot and make a lot of noise in a closed space. There's a lot of aerosolization. There's a lot of viruses in the air. These are places that where the virus spreads very effectively. However, you won't get a virus there early because these are small groups of people. But the market, you have 10,000 people coming every day. Okay, so
what about every mall, every restaurant, every retail store? Like, why would we exclude these places? Yeah.
So malls will have incoming traffic. Train stations would have incoming traffic. So all of these would have a lot of incoming traffic, and that's where we go to the next stage. So the next stage is you need the virus to stay and replicate fast. So for it to stay, you need to have a permanent population. Okay. The train station has, I don't know, 10 people who are permanent workers who are.
Wait, why does it need a permanent population?
So people who go there every day. Okay, because if you have, so cool, you have the person going on a train. At that specific hour, okay, he will be infecting much more than other people infecting, but that's it. He did his job, and from there on, the infections go back to the low infectivity areas. But once you infect someone in the market, they go back every day into this closed, poorly ventilated area with lots of wet, cold surfaces. lots of people shouting, all the things that we know are highly conducive to COVID spread. And then you have within this small space of the market, you have very high exponent.
Sure,
Okay,
wait, so two quick things. So we get into the wet market, because the pictures I've seen, I don't think convince me that this is as closed an area I feel as you sell it as. And then the second thing is for the, I guess the first thing for the train, wouldn't the train have like wouldn't the same people take the train every day? Like wouldn't those be like ordinary travelers, or at least like Monday through Friday?
Sure, but not the same people. Okay, you want to have the same people coming back to meet each other, so you will have this group infecting each other.
Wouldn't
So
that,
the
why
same
wouldn't the train have the same people like every day?
So okay, so because they don't sit in the same car every day. So yeah, okay. So the people that got infected yesterday, they may come. Some of them may come tomorrow and infect other people. But you won't have this population, close population, within which you have very rapid exponential growth. Okay. Do you understand the difference? So
I don't understand, because I feel like the same group of people, maybe not like in the same rows or in the same seats or whatever else, but I feel like more or less the same group of people every day would be coming to the train, maybe slightly different rides, 6 minutes earlier or later, but for the most part it'd be a similar group, Monday through Friday at least, or whatever the work days.
Right. So the difference is once you have this closed group of people, you have the 1,000 people that come every day to the same place. So on the second replication, you have everyone within this group. Everyone that was infected is within the group. And the second replication, again, everyone is infected is within this group. So this group will be infected very quickly. The train passengers will not be infected quickly, because every day you are infecting different people. Some of them don't come back. Some of them go to a different car. You will get within the small time that they are in the car, in the train, you will get them infecting more people than they infect otherwise. But you won't have this population that you can say, okay, this is a very specific population that is getting into a high infectivity rate, right? If you look at train passengers, you won't get them 90% infected within a few weeks. HSM in the market, you will get everyone infected within a few weeks.
Even
okay,
though, but wouldn't people who visit the
pattern.
market, if somebody visits the market, I feel like a person visiting the market would spend less time in the market than somebody getting on a train, no?
I don't know, I guess they're both about 1 hour. I mean, I don't know, half an hour, 1 hour, but why is that important?
I'm just trying to think of, like, let me reformulate what you're saying. Are you saying that the market is a higher likelihood of being the origin of like a mass spreader event because there are more permanent infected people at the market to infect others? Is that the argument? And so the train only has like a few conductors, so not as many permanent.
There are 3 components.
Okay.
You need to have 3 components. One is that the virus is constantly coming in by visitors. The other is that you have the permanent residents that can grow exponentially within it and create a high positivity rate that will be obvious, will become a pattern. And the third is that the market itself does have a higher exponent. Okay, so you have the poor ventilation, cold, wet surfaces, people shouting, all the things that are that happen.
Sure, I guess.
So all together create a high likelihood of this being an early class. And again, I'm not trying to say this is 99%.
No, yeah, I understand.
I'm saying it's not 1 in 10,000.
Sure, but obviously
more
if I
than
grant
1%.
Yeah, no, sure, I understand that. But if I grant every single underlying thing, then obviously your conclusion will follow. So I'm pushing obviously on the underlying things. And just to make sure I understand as well, why does it matter to have like permanent people spreading a disease? So for instance, I feel like if I could go between, like, let's say there's a wet market and I know there's one person there who is always coughing and always sick, and then let's say there's a train where 5 to 10% of the people could be sick, but they're always getting off and on and they're not like permanent members. I would expect the train to be a bigger super spreader area, all else equal, than the market. Why does the one permanent person being there, why does that matter? I feel like the only thing that would ever matter is just presence of the disease and how many different people.
Yeah, but once you give 5% to the train, of course it's a super spreader event. But at this point we have 1 in 100,000 of Wuhan residents infected, right? So you need to be able to create a cluster when you have only 1 in 10,000 people infected. So the train hardly sees any infections. If they get one person going on the train, infecting 5, That's it. These 5 people, for the next day, you can track them. They won't come back to the same place to create a cluster. Okay. So maybe you will say the train residents and train travelers in general will become sicker earlier. Sure, but that's not.
But you would expect them to create
clusters. They're going to be 1% instead of 0.1%, not 50% compared to 0.1.
Sure, but you would expect them to create clusters somewhere, right? Like at their places of work, at schools, at any place. But that didn't happen ever. That seems incredibly suspect. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So what we did is we went through all the locations in Wuhan. There was this Warabi paper, which was featured prominently in the debate and given a lot of weight. And they said that the Huanan market is in position 1,600 in terms of likely to be a super spreader event. They did it based on very faulty data, which is mobile check-ins, but let's ignore that. If you look at, we look at all the places that they put above the market at 1,600. None of them had the conditions that would create a super spreader event. Some of them don't have enough visitors. Okay, so if you have, you could have a place that has many people, but okay, so you have 1,000 people, maybe a workplace, but you don't have lots of visitors. So it will take a long time until the first infection will happen there. You could have places that have a lot of visitors, like train stations, but you don't have the permanent population. You could have places that have both, but are very, for example, you have open air markets. So one of the places they put far higher than Huanan market was an open air market. Of course, an open air market would not create a cluster. So we went through all these 1,600. They did not have one there that is more likely than Huanan. And again, I'm not saying this is definitely the place where it's problem. I'm just saying it's not 1 in 10,000. So so it is definitely somewhere that is very conducive to become an early cluster. I do recognize it looks weird that it's also one of the places that has wildlife, but let's address that from a different angle. So 2 things. One is when you look before COVID, markets were not considered the likely place to be to do a spillover. They were mostly focusing on places where the interaction is much more close with the animals. So places like restaurants where they actually cut the animals.
Do you think it was just unlikely then? That it was just unlucky, I guess, that there was a researcher who in 2014 visited this exact wet market and then went to the exact stall and took a picture where he thought that COVID might leak from, or not COVID, but like a disease might leak from, because this exact wet market and the exact stalls with, I think, the raccoon dogs had literally been photographed as a potential spreading area like a decade earlier.
Yeah, so that's actually two cute probabilistic inference lessons here. Okay. First of all, what you see here is someone from the lab going directly to the market. Okay, so if like all my models are wrong, you actually see a reason why people will go from the lab to the market. So that's like it was presented as if some crazy coincidence for someone from the lab to go to the market, but we see a good reason for them to go there because. Oh no!
Wait. So one, it wasn't crazy that somebody would go from the lab to the market. That's possible, yeah. Although I don't know if that connection had ever been made. The issue is that one, there's never been in any of the seropositivity stuff or any of the testing of any of the blood, there was never any positive infection ever from anybody in the lab that we see. Okay, now there might be ways to explain why that would be.
There's no testing. We don't know that.
We could, well, there was testing, but we could say it was rigged or trying to hit it or whatever. But so we have no seropositivity for anybody ever at the lab. And then 2, the issue wasn't somebody going from the lab to the wet market. Is how did they get from the lab to the wet market to the home to back to the lab and never infect anybody outside of the lab? They only dropped that infection off at the lab and then went home, and nobody else seemed to have caught stuff. I think that was the big issue with it. But yeah, back to the point of it seems like having that stall photographed itself with the raccoon dog in it. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So what I'm saying is that this is one way it could happen. This is by far not my best path, but it's definitely something that could happen. The other thing is we don't know how this what process is between us and the evidence. Okay, so we see this photo of an animal. Of course, yeah, it does make sense that people that are going to investigate to study zoonotic sources would go to places where wild animals are. So it's not a big coincidence that they would go to the market. However, we don't know what other pictures we have. Where else did we go? In retrospect, they're bringing us this picture. How big is the search space from this, from which this evidence came from? I don't know. I don't know if it's a big coincidence. It's very hard to assess these kind of retrospectively cherry-picked evidence.
Sure.
It could be interesting, but
that's fair. So it could be that he could have flown to Wuhan, went right to this place, took a picture because he thought this was a super high-risk area, and that would be pretty compelling. But you're saying that it could also be that they visited 200 locations in China, he has a million different pictures, and then this is just the one he published saying like, well, look, it happened here, right? And we don't, I guess we don't know the original source, and if we had access to that information, it would adjust. That's a fair point, sure.
Yeah, I would just correct, not a million places in China, many places in Wuhan, because he was in Wuhan because he went to visit the WIV.
Sure.
Okay, the fact that he went to Huanan market in Wuhan, that makes a lot of sense because he's going to visit the WIV and they're going to take him to nearby places where wildlife is. But what other places in Wuhan they've seen? I don't know. How many pictures he took? I don't know. It's very hard to say.
Sure.
Okay, so that's that's the next thing. Third thing is we actually see that these kind of wet markets, seafood markets, in the West, more meat packing factories, all these places have consistently created early clusters after zero COVID. Okay, so you have many places where they maintain COVID zero for a few months, and then the first cluster they see is exactly in a place like Huanan Seafood Market. So
when you say like food packing markets and everything, I mean, like, I'm curious in the totality, and I haven't looked at the epidemiological data, but like in the totality of everything, is it the most common thing, or is it like overrepresented that these diseases are starting to spread in like market type places, like meat packing type places?
Yes. So yeah. So we provided in the presentation there. If I can send you the link if you want, we presented a list of many places. I think we eventually had like 6 or 7 places, cases where after a long period of zero COVID, the first cluster is in a seafood market or similar location. Now you need to understand, zero COVID doesn't happen that often, right? This is something that like the first cluster after zero COVID is not a common event. Maybe it happens a few hundred times all over. So having a few % of those being in similar location, without explaining why, you cannot claim 1 in 10,000 coincidence for something that you actually see happen multiple %. Okay, you can go to each one and say, okay, the reason here is different than our case, the reason here is different than our case, okay. But you can maybe bring it down to, instead of 5%, you can say Huanan is very special and it's 1%, and I would go and say why Huanan is actually more susceptible, and it should be 10%, but you can't go to 1 to 10,000 when you have actual empirical data that these places tend to create early clusters.
Well, when you say you can't go 1 to 10,000, are you saying that we should start way higher, or that's what you mean, right? That it's unfair to start at...
No, I mean higher in terms of probability. I mean...
Yeah. Well, you
want to assess the coincidence of the Huanan Seafood Market being the first cluster, the probability you should give to it is at least 1%. That's the minimum you can start. Like, claiming anything beyond that, you don't have enough understanding. We don't have enough modeling of how early clusters form. Every virus is different. This is just not something we have enough understanding to claim that we know with 99.99% certainty that it cannot happen other than by chance.
Sure, but I guess I just don't know what, like gain of function leaks from labs. Like, this has never happened in all of human history. Where there's been, so that's hard. And then obviously, I don't even know if we could even model cryptic transmission, because definitionally it's cryptic. So how could you model cryptic transmission from a lab to the wet market that doesn't affect anyone else? I don't know how we would model that. Not to say
it doesn't. It grows. It grows to 100 people. This is the standard. I'm saying this is completely standard. I'm not saying I have a perfect model, then I can say this is exactly what happened. I'm just saying.
But that thing intuitively to me, and I could be wrong because I'm not, maybe I'm missing some things, but to say that 100 people could get infected cryptically and then it all dies out for the first version,
it doesn't die out. I didn't say that it dies out. I said one of them goes to Huanan Seafood Market, and once they're there, they grow 4 times faster.
Sure,
okay?
but none of the other 99 people's infected
within a few
anybody.
weeks, they overtake. Within a few weeks, they overtake the rest of the city. Okay, that's actually what we have. It's not like we have all the cases linked to the market. We have a third of the cases linked to the market. 2/3 are not linked to the market. Some of them are linked to other markets even. And nobody knows. Nobody knows where these people got infected. So
I guess the thing that would help, it would almost be dispositive. Like if there was just like one other strong cluster that emerged, like out, like decently far from the area, like not like right next door. Like it would be so strong, I think, in the favor of some other type of leak, not a zoonotic leak from the wet market. But the fact that there's like not even a single one, I just feel like it hurts so much because we're talking about 100 people or however many getting infected on the train, and then those infections staying low enough such that the wet market was such a place that it could spread, and that overtakes all the others. And when we say overtake, we really mean it's the only one basically that shows up because there's not a single other early cluster that emerges independent of like the market area.
Right. So I mean, but we actually know that 2/3 of the cases are not connected to the market.
Not connected directly, but all of them are like
going
from.
To be, so
yeah.
So of course there's going to be. Once you get to a very efficient super spreading location, it will grow very fast. It will become the first place noticed, and yeah, of course it will be the first. Remember, this happens very fast, right? Once you infect someone in Huanan Seafood Market. These people, they work closely together on ventilated area. They also go and play after hours in this crammed mahjong room. You get everyone infected very fast. So yeah, so you will have the first cluster. I'm saying HSM is a reasonable place for that to happen. It's also very possible that there were other clusters. They weren't noticed because they're not interesting. So
I feel like other clusters, I don't know how you would not notice another cluster because people would start to be hospitalized, right?
Right, so remember, people are constantly being hospitalized for the flu, so it's happening in parallel. And when you interview the doctors who raised the alarms, many of them said the reason they raised the alarm is because people told them they work in Huanan Seafood Market.
No, that's not. Wait, that's not true. The first doctor that noticed it saw similarities to the pneumonia infection of SARS-1. It wasn't there. It wasn't because of the initial link to the seafood market. It was because the doctor.
So I need to know who you're specifically referring to, but I'm not saying everyone was saying that, but definitely many of the people who reported the early cases said that the motivation to report it was because they noticed the.
So that might have been
saying that they work at the market
early on, sure. So Dr. Zhang Zizhang, I don't know how to pronounce his name. But so
yeah. So she specifically says, I can give you the quote. She specifically says she reported because it was market cases.
I know that it is impossible for that to be the case because the first couple that she identified was an elderly couple that had no known link to the seafood market. That was the first 2 that she looked at.
Sure, but when she reported is when she had the former cases. Is that important for you to do it now, or do you want me to send it later?
Well, I'm saying the very first 2 that she identified, the very first 2 where it was an elderly couple with no known link.
Yeah, but those were not reported. So if you want, I can look up the exact details. But
sure, or you can email it to me after. Sure, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll email this.
But it's kind of important because I think this is because you guys will you write off all of the early reporting as kind of being a sample bias, but I feel like but it could also be the case that organically arose because that is where the cases were kind of originating, right? Because the next, a worker from the Huanan Seafood Market was admitted on the 27th, the next day, and then on the 20th and the 29th, there were more patients from the Huanan Market who were admitted, who started to have this like pneumonia stuff. But if we just say it's like it's like a bias, a sampling bias or whatever, like 3 days in, yeah, you would expect to see it in other hospitals because they can also go back retrospectively and test because blood samples and stuff are stored, but nobody tested positive anywhere else, right?
Right. So it depends what you're referring. So the blood bank tests that turned out negative, they should not have turned positive because they had a few. I don't remember. I think 80,000. I think they had 80,000 samples, and the time they were testing them there were not more than 1 in 80,000 people infected. So they were not expecting to have more than one. So that negative is not interesting. We actually have an interesting, the first positive happens in mid-January.
Wait. 1 out of 80,000 infected. What does that number mean? We're not talking about 1 out of 80,000 of the entire population. We'd be talking about tested people in hospitals, right? So what percentage of people in hospitals would have been infected in the early part of COVID?
No, this is about the blood banks. Okay, so like one of the things that Peter brought as like strong evidence is that December blood bank samples were all negative. Okay, now remember, it needs to be 3,000 because you need to count only the ones of that relevant period. Okay, so you only have 3,000 samples from late December, and none of them are positive. But in any case, no one is claiming that there's more than 1 in 3,000 infections at that point. Okay, so when you go back, you need to go back 3 weeks for antibodies to develop, right? So when you go from late December, go back 3 weeks for antibodies to develop. What you see from the blood banks is exactly what you expect.
Is it really 3 weeks? I would imagine antibodies are developing within like a week. No, is it really 3 weeks?
No. So the ones that you test for, these are the ones that that grow after 2-3 weeks. And also you need to remember that people do not donate blood when they're sick.
Sure.
Okay. So anyway, you have this delay additionally. Okay. So the blood bank is not interesting, but in general, I think if we start going into the 500 pieces of evidence in each one, what I think is important is to understand that when we're talking about HSM, we're on an uneven playing field, because I only need to sow little doubt when people are claiming 1 in 10,000, and people cannot, well, at least the way Scott mapped it, no one is believing zoonosis if Huanan is not 1 in 10,000. Okay, if you turn Huanan to what it really is, which is maybe, I don't know, 1 in 10, then everyone becomes a lovely proponent. So my job, I think I have an easy job here. I don't need to go and explain every piece of evidence. I just need to show that these guys don't have the confidence, the 99.99% confidence, to make the claims they're making. These are the kind of advantages you get when you know how to do probabilistic inference. You know where to focus your efforts, where you can invest more time to study the evidence, and where you won't get anything. There's nothing to gain by studying more and more and more early case data, which is heavily biased. We know it's a very small percent of cases. We know it's there were incentives in how it was collected. There's just there's a bound to how much you can gain from that. So that is, I think, the main thing about the market. On top of that, since the debate, basically all the market evidence collapsed. So I don't know if you're aware of it, but a lot of the reasons that Peter gave for why the market is the spillover location, most of it is collapsing, and I'll go quickly through this stuff. So one thing...
wait, before we go through this evidence, I'm just kind of curious, because on that third point, because one thing that also wasn't very compelling to me was you claim that the wet market is like a good facilitator for like viral transmission. I feel like in all the pictures that I look at it, I don't know if I would say it's necessarily open air, but I feel like it's hardly like enclosed. Like these seem like very, very, very high ceilings and like doors open and everything else. What is the argument for why we feel like this is a highly conductive or conducive area for facilitating viral transfer?
So maybe it's best that you have the presentation in front of you. I'll send you the link, and then I'll send you to a specific page, because that was actually a finding we just saw on the last day. So you got the link.
Okay.
Okay, now I need to find where it is. Yeah, okay, so go to 23.
Okay.
Are you sharing it? I don't.
Do you need to see
I guess I don't. I guess I don't see your screen here in Zoom. I just see you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the wet market, and the next few slides they show different views of the market. So let's go to 24. What you see there is the road between east and west. Definitely a well-ventilated location. Cool. Move to 25. Now you're going a bit into the inner part of the markets, and then you can see that it becomes more crowded and less ventilated. And the interesting places. So if you look at the pink in 26 and the green in 27, these are the areas which had the highest positivity. Same for pink and green at 28. Okay, so all this areas like in the southwest corner, this is where we had the most positive cases. These are the least ventilated areas. Okay. And
sure, but I'm curious though if you have pictures of, like, if I was to look at like a mall or any type of like department store or anything in Wuhan in this area, my intuition, I could be totally wrong, but my intuition is they're going to be a billion times more crowded than like these open-facing like stalls that are facing out.
Yeah, but not with permanent residents, right? You could have areas in the mall where many people.
Well, no, all the workers would be permanent residents, just as much as any of the workers in the seafood market. No.
These are what you see here are stalls where people work and visitors come to buy, right? I don't think you have something like that. It's a place that's so crowded and so
you have like
ventilated.
Well, cashiers
and have many visitors.
Like cashiers and everything, right?
But I think you're jumping into something else. We can get back to that. The point I'm trying to make here is the areas where they actually collected the positive samples. These are the least ventilated areas in the market, and they look pretty bad, right? These are not places you would think are very are ventilated. Are the places where the virus can be cleared quickly. And
I mean, if I was visiting and looking around, I wouldn't think that these are even on the top 10 list of like least ventilated areas, though. Especially if I'm standing basically outside and then outside a stall. It's a little bit more crowded for sure, but like not even close to like a mall or like stores or restaurants.
Yeah, I guess like low-tier restaurant I imagine is more. But again, I'm not saying this place is the least ventilated place in Wuhan. I'm saying within the market, which has its own factors for why it is likely to trap a virus and amplify it quickly, this is the place that is most likely to do it. Now, it's also the place where you have the most wildlife, and this is not a very surprising coincidence, because where you have like the more sketchy, illegal stuff going on would probably be the least attractive place in the market, right? It would be the place that would look more like this, and not like the place that is in the open street when police walk around and everything, right? So this is less of an interesting coincidence as one would imagine. And what else do we have? And what was okay? So go ahead. I had something else interesting about that. I forgot.
I'm kind of curious if we're going to say that the areas where the highest amount of positive tests came from are the least ventilated ones. Why wouldn't we see the same thing repeated up in 10, 11, 12, 13, like on all the left stalls over there? Like, why don't we see the same thing repeated there?
So see what repeated, sorry.
Like, why didn't we see more positive environmental tests coming from all of the other, like...
we had positive samples all over the market. Just this corner, which was least ventilated, was the one with the highest.
Yeah, but I'm saying like for the positive samples. So the positive samples came from areas where other humans were more likely to be. But also, why weren't they more concentrated in all of the other, like going north of your row 6, 7, 8, 9? Why weren't they all also concentrated in the left on that whole side if all of these are like poorly ventilated, more like crunched areas?
So I'm because I don't see your screen. I'm not sure what you're pointing to.
So, I'm sorry. So I'm looking at on 28, right?
28, yes.
Mm-hmm. So on the left, you see you have the smaller rows on the left at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Right.
like
Right,
if you go
yeah.
up to like 11, 12, and 13, why don't you see like a whole bunch of clustered infections there as well?
So 11, 12, 13, you can see this is already more open to the ventilated area. I think you have, you can see pictures from there. So in 25, you see a picture from there. Oh shit. Okay, I lost the screen. I think in the earlier slides you have some pictures from the higher part. Again, you have positive samples. They're just lower.
Sure.
Okay. But I want to do something else that
Okay.
you may find interesting. So, what do you imagine among the people who believe zoonosis is the source? How many of them, like, how strong do you think do they feel that Huanan Seafood Market is the spillover location?
From people who have researched it a great deal, or just like a general consensus?
Yeah, I'm talking top experts. Yeah. Like
I couldn't say. I haven't researched any other potential starting point. I don't know. My guess would be high, but I'm not aware of any other opinions in the field about it. I didn't see any papers about other origin points.
Yeah, so this is very interesting. So actually, the people who support zoonosis, like the prominent supporters, they do not think the seafood market is the spillover location. And that has a very interesting probabilistic meaning, because, okay, so if you say HSM is a 1 in 10,000 evidence, but then the people who you think are reaching the same conclusion are not supporting you, okay, you can say, okay, lab leaks, these are people with lab coats, whatever.
Wait, real quick, just so I can understand what you're saying. When you're saying there are other scientists, when they say when they say that this is not necessarily where the spillover happened, are they saying the spillover happened with the workers that transported the animals to this wet market, or from a different?
They don't know. They just they think the same thing that we're saying. They think that it's an amplification location, but not a spillover location. Okay, so just it's spillover somewhere. Might not even be in Wuhan. We don't know. Spillover somewhere else, and HSM was an amplification location.
Oh wait, can you give me who can you give me a couple research?
Let me give you some quotes. Let me copy some of those. Okay.
Or like some names or a paper or two, because I haven't seen that in any paper.
First is the WHO report. That's like the most serious. Okay, let me just copy everything to your chat. So this is WHO is the most serious research. And you can see the quote I just sent you. Oh, it's too big. Okay, I'm going to cut it. Okay. Okay, that's WHO. So you can show that. The next is Ralph Barrick. Okay, maybe are you showing it to the audience now?
I can drag it down here. Okay. Wait, does this? So this is January 14th. Oh, okay, from January 14th to February 10th, 2021. Is anything here updated, or is this like the consensus still to today? Do you think you're saying?
So they didn't. There was no update published. Over time, there is more evidence that the market is not the source. We can go over that if you want. But I think it's it's good to see what these people. So the WHO say they think it's an amplification location. That's the quote I gave you. Next is okay. So the U.S. intelligence, they're divided. So some agencies say lab leak, some say zoonosis. But if you look at the ones that say zoonosis, none of them mention the market as the reason. Okay, so if you go to the...
One piece at a time. So just looking at this WHO report, right?
Sure.
But just reading this quote, many of the early cases were associated with the Huanan market, but a similar number of cases were associated with other markets, and some were not associated with any markets. Transmission within the wider community in December could account for cases not associated with the Huanan market, which, together with the presence of early cases not associated with that market, could suggest that the Huanan market was not the original source of the outbreak. Other milder cases that were not identified, however, could provide the link between the Huanan market and early cases without an apparent link to that market. No firm conclusion, therefore, about the role of Huanan market in the origin of the outbreak or how the infection was introduced into the market can currently be drawn. So this seems like an indecisive thing, not saying that they believe it came from somewhere else, no?
No, I'm just saying, people claiming that there's a 99.9% confidence about the market, they're not agreeing with the scientific consensus. Okay, they're making a claim that is extremely overconfident. Like no rational person would say, I have 99.9% confidence of a fact. Yeah, but the leading scientists, they tend to say 50.
Sure, but I think it also depends on, so like, just if we were only talking about one or two things, I think that would be probably overconfident. But in the totality of considering the evidence, so like this, plus the architecture of the virus, plus, other factors would move you up toward, maybe 99% is too much, but like, would you move you towards...
You're talking about lab leak, or... I'm just talking now about whether QAnon is a spillover location. I'm saying even people who don't think lab leak, who think zoonosis is the source, they don't think QAnon is a likely spillover location. They say it could be, but probably not. So that means that people...
Well, wait, this report doesn't say probably not. It just says they have inconclusive evidence in 2021 of January.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not important. Even if they said that 90% it's the source, it's still very, very far from 99.99. So I'm fine with 90%. 90% would still get lab leak. So you're saying something that the scientific community is conflicted upon, and you're claiming I know 99.9% that it's true. That's not something that any rational person could do.
Sure. I mean, well, realistically, like if we were betting on odds, I probably wouldn't say 99.9%. I'd probably say I'd say 90% or 95 maybe. Probably not 99. That's a pretty
beautiful. Once you say 90%, you're at lab leak, because everyone else that put odds at the market, they put 1 in 10,000, 1 in 5,000 in order to reach lab leak. If you remove that piece of the puzzle, they all turn lab leak. Okay, because all the rest of the evidence, it leans lab leak, right?
I don't know if there's any other evidence that leans lab leak at all.
Okay, we can discuss this, but let's finish just the market. So, okay. So that was WHO. The next is Ralph Baric. Ralph Baric is considered the world's leading coronavirologist. He gave a testimony at Congress, and he says the same thing. He says, we see all these studies claiming that they can pinpoint it to the market. I don't see it. It doesn't look strong enough. It seems like an amplification location, right? Do you have the quote on the screen?
I'm trying to, I think it's loading the testimony.
You could just bring the quote.
What page is this on?
That's written in what I gave you. It's not where I gave you. Where is it? Let me search for that. Oh, this is like this PDF that can be searched upon.
Yeah, I think my thing is saying extracting text from PDF, so I imagine it's doing a read of the text or whatever.
Yeah, okay, I'll send you that offline. You can trust me. I didn't invent the quote. Okay, so I'll send you the location later. And the last is the intelligence community, the people who support zoonosis do not give the market as a reason at all. So, yeah. Send to family, send Barry quote, I'll send that to you. Okay, so so that's I think where the market is. We can discuss about market evidence against the market, because a lot of the evidence that was presented as foolproof in the debate, and we said there's not enough confidence to say such extreme claims. All of it was eventually returned. For some, we can talk about that, or we can talk about other evidence, or whatever you want, or.
Yeah, we can move through anything. So this will be one of the things that I kind of push on in terms of this type of rationale, is I feel like the underlying evidence is really important. So my understanding as of this point right now is I believe the scientific consensus, most scientists believe that it did come from the Huanan seafood market. I think that underlying claim is a little important, and then you're contesting that claim, but I think it's kind of important to get to the root of how we contest that. So I understand I have a WHO report from February 2021, but there's been a lot of research has been released since then. So I'm not convinced that this WHO report is saying the scientific consensus is that it leaked from some other place. I think this report was saying was that at this point in time, there's not enough to strongly conclude that it came from the Huanan seafood market. And then I've got this Barrick testimony from the House. Unfortunately, for reasons we might disagree politically, the U.S. House of Representatives is an absolute joke when the Republicans are in charge. I wish I could see exactly what this guy said in his testimony. I see the quote that you're saying is that, and the thing we have really solid data for is that the market was suspended application in late December, January. That's still 2 months from the origin date based on a molecular clock, which means it was circulating somewhere before it got there. So what does this claim is that there were early infections in October? I'm not aware of any paper that makes that claim, if that's what the transmission would have looked like.
This is based on genetic clock. Okay, so when you look at the diversity of viruses, late October seems like a good guess.
Is cryptic transmission for 2 months something that we expect to see with SARS-CoV-2?
Oh, it's more like 5 weeks.
Is cryptic transmission for 5 weeks something we expect to see with no other clusters emerging? It was just the Huanan seafood market was the perfect place. No malls, no restaurants, no schools, no workplaces, no other market.
All the places you mentioned are not places that are very conducive to create an early cluster. Some of them would be amazing super spreading locations once the virus gets above some threshold in the population, but if you want to create a cluster with just 100 cases,
I'm wholly unconvinced that I don't think that the seafood market, if we're saying that clusters are that hard to start, I'm wholly unconvinced that the seafood market is going to be the place to start. I would instantly go to malls, and I would argue that that's like way more likely in every conceivable sense than or trains.
So the main issue with malls is you don't have the local population infecting each other, right? So in Huanan they are very close together, interacting in the same place, shouting, and you additionally have the mahjong room where they socialize after hours, and we know that many of the early cases were said to be infected in mahjong room. Okay, so it's not just making up this mahjong room. This is, when you actually look at what people say, they say the early cases got into the mahjong room.
I'm not aware of any evidence.
It's not something you have at a mall, right?
I don't know if anybody said that they're...
Oh yeah, I can give you. So in my look for mahjong in the presentation I gave you, it's in.
Also, wait, real quick, for COVID, or I'm sorry, for this House for this House report, was this I see the date up top is 2024-04. Was this an April 2024 presentation to the House of Representatives, to the committee?
Yeah.
It was okay. Because
I think so. I mean, I don't remember, but it sounds right. It was pretty recent.
Okay, so
the mahjong quote is slide 51.
Okay, I'll go check that out. But so just in reading this, like one of the claims that this Barrick guy is saying was that for early cases, 85 to 90% were asymptomatic. Was that true of the very first version of COVID? I thought that a much higher percentage of those, maybe weren't hospitalized, but I thought a much higher percentage of those had people exhibiting symptoms.
I don't know what this is about. That doesn't sound right.
So scrolling up, I'm just reading from before the quote. So I'm on page 102 of that House committee thing. So the 2 months from the origin date based on molecular clock, which means it was circulating somewhere before it got here, and the question is, where is it?
Did you say 102?
Yeah, like middle to middle bottom of 102.
Right, okay.
May it keep you fighting fit.
So where do you see? Oh, okay. I'm trying to chase it.
So then on page 103, yeah, he makes this statement.
Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't sound right.
That sounds aggressively and egregiously incorrect. Like ideologically incorrect.
Maybe he meant that at that time they were only the only way they knew about cases was through hospitalizations. But I don't think he thinks 90% are asymptomatic.
Well, the issue is that this is in response to I don't know who's asking the question, but the guy asking the question is saying, and he's bringing up the good point, is that if we claim there's asymptomatic transmission for 2 months, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of cases, and then his response is, well, 90% of those are asymptomatic. But even if that was true, that'd still be 10,000 symptomatic cases. So I don't know who this Barrett guy is. I would have to go and check. Is this guy, if I look this guy up, is he going to believe a whole bunch of other crazy shit about how like mRNA vaccines are poison?
This is the world's top coronavirologist. No, this is not someone that you will. I think so. So
this is the top. I could be totally wrong.
Maybe it is possible.
Sure.
Maybe it's possible that there is a high asymptomatic rate in at that time. Probably not 90%, but it could be high. We do know from.
Wait, just real quick. You said this guy's the world's top coronavirologist?
Yeah, if you search Google for world's top coronavirologist, you get him and possibly Xi Jinping, the Chinese one.
I feel like I've read a decent number of papers now from cover to cover on this. I feel like his name wasn't coming up a ton. There are a few names that I see in a lot of these papers. Rambert Anderson, a lot of Chinese names. The Wumbali, whatever, I can't pronounce the guy's name.
He wasn't involved in much of the.
Warbe.
He wasn't involved in much of the studies, but he has a major coronavirus lab, I think, in University of North Carolina. He's a major. There's not many people who are more knowledgeable about that than him.
Yeah, just as a quick thing, so I checked this guy out on Instagram, and I see in 2016, Dr. Burke revolutionized holistic healthcare in North Carolina by introducing neurofeedback therapy or through My Brain Doctor, showcasing dedication to advancing patient well-being. Certified in neurofeedback, acupuncture, nutrition, and various therapeutic techniques, his expertise spans a wide range of chiropractic methods integral to concussive care. I don't believe this guy is a top world virologist.
I would, so. If your angle is to discredit Ralph Barrick in terms of his expertise on coronaviruses, this is not a good angle for you.
Okay.
But,
well, I would take that angle also because he said 90 to 95. But he also said the early 85 to 90% of cases early on were asymptomatic. That immediately stands out to me as being a totally not true number. And he's arguing for cryptic transmission of hundreds of thousands of cases without showing up anywhere in any hospital tests. This all sounds entirely impossible to me. But
okay, so it could be that I'm wrong. It could be that the asymptomatic rate is higher than I thought. We do know from the serology in Wuhan that we had 600,000 cases when they went into lockdown. So the cases were definitely underestimated. I don't know if 85-90% is the number. I mean, maybe he's defining asymptomatic in a different way than I am. But he's not. This is not a person who just says nonsense. But he's one of the authors of the diffuse proposal. Okay, so he's.
Yeah, but how many people authored that diffuse proposal? Was it somebody that was this like hundreds or thousands of proposal authors, or?
No, I think 20 or something. I don't remember. I need to look.
Okay.
He gave WIV the idea to start FCS. This is, all these are the areas of that he's most interested in. All these the things that actually ended up in SARS-2.
Okay.
By coincidence or not by coincidence. Yeah.
Somebody said in chat that the guy that I found here, this might be a different Dr. Robert Barrick, that maybe this guy is not the same one.
No, it's Ralph, not Robert. This is Ralph Barrick.
Oh, okay. But then I might have misheard you there. Okay, never mind. Then this might have been.
Yeah, that did not make sense, the acupuncture stuff.
Okay.
Anything take your fancy?
Okay, this guy looks much more like the person you were talking about. His work involves coronaviruses, including gain-of-function research aimed at devising effective vaccines against coronavirus. Okay. This is probably the guy we're talking about. Oh, and he works at the University of North Carolina, so it makes sense that he authored that diffuse proposal. Okay, makes more sense. All right.
Okay. I also have chat support in parallel, and I'm getting that there are 5 authors on diffuse, 3 main authors, and Barrick is one of them.
Okay.
I am spirits in a tree. Oh, take a pun.
Okay.
Watch yourself.
Okay, so what else? What else would you like to do? Interesting things to discuss is
you said
evidence.
Well, you said something you said before was you felt that even outside of the source of the virus, you felt that there were other arguments that if you eliminated the wet market, that there were other arguments that you felt cut in favor of a lab leak. What were some of the other arguments?
Okay, so
Good. Now the other.
so there are a few about how this does not look like this is not the pattern of zoonosis. One is that we don't see an animal. There is only one source of all infections in the world, which is not what we see in pandemics. Usually in pandemics, you have the animal infecting multiple people. I mean, the animal population affecting multiple people, which is what you expect because the virus infects lots of animals and they interact with people in multiple interfaces. So you see multiple spillovers. You see it in epidemiology. You actually see them being infected, but you also see it in the phylogenetic tree, right? You see different genetic sources that cannot be merged into a single source. So we don't have that in SARS-2. Everything goes back to the one spillover in Wuhan. Yeah, so we don't have the host. We don't have multiple spillovers. Let's see what else. What else is good evidence?
How do you account for like the question about like we're creating a secret viral backbone using non-predicted proteins for bindings, and then all of this is the explanation that it's just there's a chance that there was top secret research done that nobody published anything on?
Okay, so I'll go to that in a minute. The other things that we have is that the virus is very well adapted to humans. So it seems like it is most adapted to human ACE2 than any other animal. Okay, that's an interesting coincidence.
Well, I feel like the evidence for that cuts against, because when you're talking about the adaptation, so one of the almost immediate adaptations that shows up is the evolution in the region binding domain part of the, I think it's the S1 subunit. You see that the D to G 614 mutation that happens almost in a single generation. Yeah. And if you were trying to adapt something, pre-adapt something to human tissue, it seems like that's the thing that would have been solved in the lab almost immediately. So the fact that that wasn't solved, but solved almost immediately once it jumped to human populations would be an argument against creation in a lab and adaptation to humans.
Yeah, so the D614G is definitely an adaptation that happened after spillover. It's not to say that this was the best possible human virus, but it's saying that all animals it was tested on, it was the best for humans. So it doesn't have to be that you managed to find all the perfect mutations in the lab, but definitely this is something that looks like had humans in mind initially.
Well, when you say, well, it's not so much about finding the best mutations in the lab. It's that if you're trying to adapt something, because unless the papers come out to say otherwise, there were 6 key sites that were identified specifically in the region binding motif or whatever that were not predicted proteins.
Receptor binding motif.
Yeah, these weren't predicted to be the most optimal ways to bind ACE2, but they ended up being the ones that showed up in SARS-CoV-2. So how could a computer model and then testing have validated that without also stumbling upon the D614G
so
mutation?
that was another piece of evidence that was overrated. Simulations are simulations. Some people showed simulations where it does perform best on human ACE2. So we don't know which software they used in the lab, and we don't know what were their models for filtering for best ACE2 match, but saying that this is not that simulation would definitely preclude it is not correct.
I agree with you there. There could be other explanations. I'm just saying that I think that if anything, that would cut against lab leak rather than cutting in favor of it. I don't think it cuts in favor of it at all. If anything, it cuts against. We could say it's neutral, but
okay, I'm not gonna. Yeah, this is not one of the main pieces of evidence. So these are like the zoonosis pattern, and then the strongest evidence is the genetic manipulation, and that is the presence of the FCS, the way it was inserted into a well-preserved area of the virus, exactly at the S1S2 junction with the non-viral.
So can I ask in terms of that? Why I don't think there's ever in the history of all of research been an out-of-frame insertion of 12 nucleotides. Why would they do it with this virus that they're making in the lab?
Right. So the claim that is out of frame, this is not This is it's like the DNA claim. This is not choosing the best explanation for what we see. So what we see, okay, right. So what we see is you can interpret it out of frame, but right next to the insert there is an SNV, a single nucleotide variation, and
Polymorphism.
one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The single nucleotide polymorphism, right? That's
Like a one simple mutation.
Yeah, yeah.
And without that simple mutation, then it's not. It's an in-frame. It's an in-frame insertion. And in that area of the genome, you have about 10% SNVs.
Wait, an in-frame insertion of 11 nucleotides then?
No. It's 12. But if you the last one is already overlapping with the previous with the bat viruses, and the first one you just need to turn it into. Just need to assume it's an SNV and it's in frame.
Okay.
So
there's also, but
so
there's also,
this is a 1 in 5 coincidence. You can have an SNV at the beginning, at the end. It could be before the virus got to white WFV. It could be after it got out. This is not an interesting evidence here.
I guess, but then the question would be, one, we see a whole bunch of these like 12 nucleotide insertions that show up in different, I think even in cervicoviruses they've been found now. But the idea that must have come from a lab when we see 12 nucleotide insertions in a lot of places, and the fact that it at least appears to be out of frame, although maybe we could say there was just a SNP that happened in the first thing and it's actually an in-frame insertion. And then the fact that we can probably say this probably wouldn't have been highly infective in humans had there not been that FCS, right? So we wouldn't even be talking about this. Like, it seems like you probably need the FCS for it to be highly infective. So that's like a pre-requirement. I don't feel like this cuts in favor of lab leak at all here.
Yeah, right. So, so that's another thing where, probabilistic inference is helpful, because this is something that people do very often. Is when a person says this is good evidence because it's hard to. I think I'm saying it's rare under your hypothesis, and the other guy says, here's one case when it happened. Okay, but how often does this happen?
Fairly often. It's not just one case.
Millions.
Yeah.
No, we know how many. We know very well the number of insertions in SARS-2 viruses because we have millions of sequences. So we have, I think, something in the range of 50 inserts out of millions of mutations, right? So you need to find a good reason why this specific type of mutation happened here, and not, and they didn't instead just mutate through SNVs like the million of other cases we have. Now, if I was to use the HSM logic, I would say the probability of an FCS being a clean insertion with CGG and all of that is 1 in 10 billion, and therefore therefore lab leak is proven. But no, that's not what we do. We say we don't know why the insert happened. It's very rare. There could be some evolutionary reason that is not yet understood. No one was able to find it.
Well, I don't understand it. Well, it makes it more infective, right? I mean, like, there could be FCS insertions that theoretically happen in other places that just cause the virus to die because that 12 nucleotide insertion is just not, it doesn't help with the fitness of the virus, right? So it goes extinct immediately.
Yeah, sure. Having an FCS, that in itself is not amazing evidence because you need to have something that makes a pandemic. That's a given. The fact that it's an FCS and not something else is interesting because WIV were researching specifically FCSs. By the way, that's one of the things we found after the debate. Initially, the diffuse report said any cleavage sites, and later it turns out FCS were the main interest, but never mind.
Well, but I don't think any of the research had them manually inserting FCSs like this at this part of the virus. Also, keep in mind this is we're talking a novel.
This one is 2?
Yeah. In a novel
so
background.
That was something that was a big deal at the debate. That the diffuse says it's S2, but then we have the full diffuse correspondence before the final publication, and they specifically say S1, S2 there. Okay, so that's another thing that was post-debate and was supporting lab leak.
Sure.
Anyway, that's the thing.
I'd be interested to see that link. Also, given that because also the lab that would have done this work would have been the one in North Carolina, right? Not the one in Wuhan, number one. And then number two, the diffuse proposal was technically never accepted, although they could still work on it in secret. But then number three, all the researchers would have had to have been working on it in secret while also publishing other stuff. And then number four, they would have had to have stumbled upon stuff like this that was highly infective, that they weren't publishing anything on, or they didn't notify anybody on. And then five, on a novel virus backbone that wasn't being used in any other research or documented anywhere or released anywhere afterwards, which is not impossible, I guess, but...
And so all the things that you said, they have very good explanations. Some of them only revealed after the debate. We can go over them one by one.
Okay.
But that's actually a good time to raise an interesting point. So when you work with exact sciences, we have this this requirement of theories being able to provide predictions, which is something that is very strong. We all know to quote the relativity and the prediction about Mercury's position during the eclipse. And when you deal with complex mechanisms, it's hard to make a prediction because so many things could happen. However, what you do have is so we had this debate, and then let's see all the evidence that came out after. All of the evidence that came out after was directly contradicting claims made by Peter in the debate, and I don't think there is one piece of evidence that came out that contradicted something we said. So again, it's not something I'm going to say this is predicting the Mercury's position on an eclipse, but that's something interesting to note. And I think it's like something like 6 or 7 pieces of evidence, all of them very strongly rebutting the hypothesis that Peter presented.
Okay. I will say after this
So
comment,
you want to go over the specifics you've mentioned, the secret viruses and all of that?
I don't know if I have the time to go over it right now, but if you email me all of it, I'll read it through start to finish, and then we could revisit and have another chat with it. Because I am writing up something on this, and I'd be interested to go over all of it. Yeah, I would be super interested if you forward me that. Yeah.
Okay, so let me see. I got everything. So you want to see the evidence that they're doing S1, S2. FCS is specifically interesting. You want evidence about secret viruses not published.
Basically everything. You said that new stuff came out, especially after the debate with
Okay,
Peter.
all the new stuff I'll
yeah,
send
I'd be
you.
interested.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but you also mentioned like all the evidence you think is strong. I can provide you the rebuttals for all of that. You want to run through those again, make sure I didn't miss anything?
The new evidence that came out, you mentioned something about... Oh, I'm curious. You mentioned something about there's just a SNP basically prior to the 12 nucleotide insertion. So what appears to be an out-of-frame 12 nucleotide insertion is actually an in-frame one with just a SNP occurring before that makes it appear different. Yeah, I'd be curious to see that. Did the S1, S2 subunit, did that exist before SARS-CoV-2, or is that a novel feature of the SARS-CoV-2 virus?
I'm not sure I understand the question. The existing of the S1, S2 junction or the FCS and the S1, S2 junction?
The FCS and the S1X. No, the spike.
No, that's new. That's of course. That's what makes it SARS-2. Without this, we don't have a pandemic.
Yeah. Wait. So then, how was there? Oh, you're just saying that they theorized putting an FCS that would have created the S1, S2 in the paper in the diffuse grant, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, and you then get in Wuhan a virus with an FCS and the S1, S2 in a clean insert with a non-viral genome. I mean, if I wasn't into probabilistic inference, I would say that is a 1 in a billion coincidence. But
sure.
I know that you can never be so confident. But this is pretty strong evidence.
Okay.
It doesn't get much to that.
Sure. I'd be interested in seeing that number one,
systems.
like what that looked like. But then two, how do you explain? Because I believe that FCS started to show up for the bat populations in like the Banal 52 one, and then in the there's another sarcovirus. Do you think these were just like reverse infected or recombinant things? Yeah.
There are no FCSs in sarcoviruses. So all the 3 banal viruses and the RATG13, they do not have FCS.
They don't have the FCS thing? Oh, okay, they're just a high percentage match or whatever, the 96% match without the FCSs.
Yeah, for everything but FCS. That's what makes it more interesting, because you have this completely preserved spike protein with very little variation compared to nature, and then you have this 12 nucleotide inserts just popping up out of nowhere. This is yeah.
Sure.
Let me see if I can show you the genome, because it's very nice. don't know if I have it here.
Hammer and anvil.
I know what to show. If you go to so in this link, this is a response to Scott Alexander. So scroll until you see like an image with lots of letters and colors. Let me see if I can see your screen somewhere here.
You can go to youtube.com/destiny or kick.com/destiny, but I'm scrolling till I see a lot of colors.
Yeah, I have you somewhere here. I don't know where it is. I need to find it. Let's see. Okay. Oh, it's a long delay, I see. Okay. So not very helpful. Anyway, scroll to like where you see lots of letters and
What am I looking for, like a nucleotide sequence or?
yeah. With comparing two sequences.
Can you give me a word to control F beforehand or?
I can find one for you. Look for HKU. Yeah, there you go. That's the one.
Okay.
Yeah, so I see on delay. I don't know if so. I assume. Hope you've seen what I'm looking for. So you can see. So it says SARS-2 versus closest relative. You can see like the entire sequence is very well conserved. You have only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 non-synonymous mutation and lots of synonymous mutations, which is an indication that this is a highly functional area of the genome, which evolutionary pressure prevents mutations. And then you have this 12 nucleotide insert, which is very weird, right? There's two things here. First, you have these 4.
Well, wait. Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, sure, of course.
If we say that this is a highly preserved part of the genome,
You're not looking at the right one. You're looking at the HKU. Look above that.
okay. If we say that this is a highly preserved part of the genome, then if for an FCS to show up here to increase the fitness of the virus, wouldn't we expect this to always happen in the form of an insertion?
No, if you have, we actually know we have subecoviruses with that are a few SNVs from FCS. They could have easily mutated to that. There's nothing.
Well, I thought
there's no reason.
Well, I'm
there's
saying,
no reason not to do that way.
wait, you just said if it's a highly conserved area. My understanding of a highly SNPs.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah. Can you explain that? Because
Okay.
it feels like
Yeah. So this would happen. The FCS would not happen in bats because there's selective pressure against FCSs in bats because in bats it's an enteric virus and not a respiratory virus, and in the gut it's not good to have an FCS. So this will be happening in the host animal.
Real quick, I'm sorry, that's getting really into it, but why is it bad to have an FCS in the gut?
That's beyond me. I just you reached the edge of my knowledge about bat virus.
Okay.
So it shouldn't happen in the bats. There's a strong selective pressure against FCS in bats, and that's why we don't have the FCSs in nature. But once it jumps to the host animal, the intermediate host, there it can start having the selective pressure for having an FCS and then becoming a respiratory virus and getting to animals. So yeah, so definitely there's no FCS will not happen in bats, but once it gets to another animal, then you start to have the selection for FCS. Anyway, so you see here so first of all you have 4 at a time, which is again a coincidence. Second is that it's an insert, right? If you see in the comparison, it's all blanks at the reference sequence. So you have like 2 coincidences here. The third coincidence is that the sequence you have there, the CGG1, it's something that is not found anywhere in this virus or in any related viruses. This is not a sequence that is common in viruses, so we don't know where you get from.
Wait, real quick.
It happens that you have foreign sequences inserted, but it's not the common
I'm just
way.
curious.
The common way is just to have a duplication. You have an existing sequence, and then it's duplicated from another part of the sequence because the ribosome, I think, slips while reading the RNA.
Why is it that you would have, if you were working with a lab to do this type of insertion, why would you use one less commonly found than one?
Place has not.
Good. So just to finish this one, you can see, if you see the right next to the insertion, you see an A and T in gray.
Mm-hmm.
That's the SNV that makes it in frame. Okay.
Theoretically, right?
Yeah, that's the more parsimonious comparison of the two viruses. Okay, so why they did this? Okay, that was something that the debate. My position was, we don't know what is the motivation of an engineer. They could be trying so many things. Just claiming that PRA is unlikely, you could say it's not the most likely.
Wait. Can I wait? Let me hold on real quick. Let me challenge you on that one.
Sure.
Are you?
Of course.
Do you have? What's your background for work?
What do you mean?
Do you do like computer programming stuff, or do you do like any kind of engineering?
I was when I was a child, I was into computer programming. Later on, I moved more to mathematics, probability, business, of course.
Gotcha. Okay. So I don't know much about lab stuff. I've learned a little bit in the course of doing this debate. But so when I hear the thing of maybe they were just trying random stuff, my understanding is if you wanted to do a type of insertion, if you wanted to do a type of recombinant technique to create something, that it wouldn't necessarily be maybe for some things, but in a lab you wouldn't be able to say oh, I just want to swap this and this. What you would have to say is there are certain techniques that exist that allow you to manipulate certain parts of a strand of RNA, that allow you to insert certain things that work in certain because these are certain methods and things that have been tested and verified. You can't just swap out anything with anything else, like changing the letters on a computer or whatever. Is it the case that if no other researcher, I just don't know the answer to this, but I would be curious in talking to somebody that works in a lab, is it the case that no other researcher that's done this particular type of insertion, would the technique to do this be trivially easy, that a researcher could just randomly throw in a 12 nucleotide sequence just to see what happens if this is not a documented thing that any other type of researcher in a lab works? Because
it's not. You don't just do randomly stuff. You need to have some reasoning. It's not terribly expensive. I think a few $100s per trial like this. But yeah, you don't just do random stuff. You have some methodology. What we said is we don't know what they're looking to do.
Sure.
We've shown many possible motives. We just said we don't know because we don't know. Sometimes you need to accept uncertainty. But what happened is that after the debate, we had the Ralph Barrick testimony, and there he describes that one of the motivations for the fuse and the research they were interested in 2019 was feline coronaviruses ADE. ADE is antibody-dependent enhancement. This is a mechanism by which viruses defend against immunity. They penetrate immune cells, and they were very interested in studying whether they had this AD and feline coronavirus.
Wait, real quick, I'm sorry, just because I had a different understanding from studying vaccines. My understanding is antibody-dependent enhancement, ADE, is what happens when the immune system finds a way to basically bind to certain proteins of a virus that's supposed to make it ineffective, but in actuality, it makes the virus more fit to invade cells. Not necessarily anything invading immune cells, but just a way that the virus adapts such that when your immune system responds to it, the antibodies are actually assisting with viral replication. Or maybe there are different types of ADE that it could be, but
no. So I think AD is specifically about fighting against immune cells. I don't think it specifically improves other effectivity, but I may be wrong.
Okay.
So they were interested in that, and for the feline coronaviruses, you do have an issue with you do have sequences with PRAR. So you have this exact sequence there, and they were they actually specifically talked about the fact that cleavage is not a linear function, right? It's not the better cleavage you have, the better it is for the viruses, because if you can have too good cleavage, that damages infectivity, right? So it's a complex mechanism, and they actually had the cases in feline coronaviruses where when cleavage was worsened, it became lethal. Right? They had these two cats in the same household that one mutated to have a worse cleavage site, worse FCS site, and it became lethal for that. So that was something they were interested. They were generally interested about cross immunity, about if they develop a vaccine for SARS-1, what would happen with SARS-2? So these are all the things that actually turned out to be in their interest, and is exactly what we see here. We see this PRAR sequence, which we know from feline coronaviruses, relevant to the exact things they were looking for. So
Sure.
yeah, so as time goes by, we see how this virus is exactly what you'd expect to see from Wuhan. Originally, our position was you can't be confident to say this is not what WFE would do, because you don't know what's in people's
Well, yeah, but
plans,
I feel like even on that, I feel like it could cut either way depending on how you look at it. So when you talk about the cleavage being better and being worse for the adaptivity of the virus, I don't remember exactly, but that might have been the first big mutation for the Delta variant. Because what happens is if that FCS is too effective and it cleaves it too hard, when you start losing a bunch of those S1 crowns, the only way for the virus to get absorbed is like through the endocytosis of just S2. It's a shitty way of binding. But when the virus mutated and then you saw that the FCS was cleaved, but more of those subunits stayed attached afterwards, they didn't get cut off completely. Like you were saying, the infectivity massively increased. But I think this was a later evolution of SARS-CoV-2. If this is something that they knew from the cat stuff, why wouldn't this have been a thing that was initially included to make it so that the furin cleavage site wasn't causing them to be cut so hard in the beginning? Because that was like a later mutation that turned out with SARS-CoV-2 to make it more infected. I think that was the difference between Delta. Not saying it necessarily comes from another, but I'm saying like, well, couldn't somebody argue that they should have known that? Yeah.
So I think Delta has an extra R in the FCS, and that actually improved cleavage. Didn't worsen. I'm not sure. I need to verify.
Mm-hmm.
But again, at this point, what you're saying is you're trying to put the engineering competition with 1 billion people generating mutations all over the planet. Of course, the evolution will win eventually. So they have good ideas how to imitate things that could happen in evolution and test them out. Of course, there will always be things they didn't think about. I don't think you should expect it to be the perfect final virus.
True, but to be fair, I'm not saying the perfect final virus. Like that, the D614G mutation shows up in a single generation. Like I think it's generation 0 when you infect a host and then see how it spreads. Like I think it shows up almost immediately. So it just seems like if it was a thing that, was made in a lab, it just there are things that you would expect to see very quickly. Would be my guess, but yeah.
I'll get back to you on that. I don't think this is that critical, but I'll check about that. So we want
Sure.
the cleavage and the 614G.
And then I guess kind of like, yeah, so when you email me this, I'll go over this and then we can revisit the conversation too. I know you don't have to have this technically to have presented a reasonable argument, but I guess like in your mind, do you have like a coherent start to finish? What do you think is the most likely explanation for what happened start to finish that accounts for like the odd piece of evidence or whatever?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, my chat tells me the 614G did take some time. But I'll send you a more accurate answer later. Okay, so start to finish what happened, and I think what's important to notice as I go through this, at no point am I going to claim anything that is not just what people do.
Sure.
This is all a very reasonable progression.
Sure. And I'll say, like,
okay,
even to your credit or anybody else's, like, you could have unreasonable. There could be things that are, well, not unreasonable. There could be hard to account for facts.
Yeah, just
right?
not too many.
Yeah,
not too many. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you do have a once in a century pandemic.
Yeah, regardless of whether or not the answer is zoonotic or lab leak, it was obviously a somewhat unlikely set of events to get here. Because, yeah, like you said, it's not like this is happening all the time on either end. So, yeah.
I like this one.
Yeah. By the way, this is something we like to do when we want to sanity test our hypothesis. Is trying to think, okay, based on our assumptions, how often do we expect this to happen? And if we say, okay, even if we get that one hypothesis is 50 times more likely than the other, if this leading hypothesis says I don't know, this pattern of events needs to happen once every million years, then we messed up. Then that's not a good hypothesis. Maybe it's better than the alternative one, but we're still not there. So on top of comparing hypotheses, you also need to show that your leading hypothesis is something that matches reality. Okay, so